Hey everyone, I hope you're having an amazing day. My name is Meg McCabe and I am the host of the Full and Thriving podcast. I'm also a coach, a group facilitator, and a speaker. And I am so passionate about helping people live their full and thriving life. If this is your first time listening to the show, welcome and thank you so much for joining. If you are a longtime listener, I am giving you a big hug for coming back and joining me for this episode. I'm so grateful to you and everyone who always listens to this show. And today we're going to be talking about 7 powerful questions you need to ask yourself before making a big decision in your life. And now that I'm officially 34 years old, I feel like I've lived many phases of my life. When I was younger, I really just jumped right into these big decisions without thinking things through or asking reflective questions. And now that I'm older, I take pride in having more intentionality behind my decision making and what I choose to do with my life. And today, I thought it would be really fun for me to walk you through a few questions I think are really important when it comes to getting clear on what you want and what your next move should be. So if you're someone who is currently facing a big decision about your life and not sure what you want to do about it, this episode is 100% for you. I know you're probably thinking, Meg, why should we listen to your advice on this topic? And I just want to let you know that I have made so many decisions that I did not put enough thought behind in my life, mostly about when it comes to making moves, like moving across the country or getting jobs or even relationships. I feel like if I could take these 7 questions and ask my younger self these, I wouldn't have made so many mistakes. For instance, when I was 24, I lived in New York City. I absolutely loved it. I had so many friends. I had a great life. I just really enjoyed that time. I lived there for about 2 years. And then I started kind of getting financially shaky. Like I wasn't really saving money. I was just working commission-based jobs or gig-based jobs. I didn't have anything stable. So I really freaked out and just started applying to jobs all over the country to cities that I've heard of or sort of liked. So I didn't really think about, hey, what do I want my career to look like now? Now that I'm going to get a job, what do I want that job to be? What do I want my career to look like? What do I want my lifestyle to look like? Where do I want to live? Instead, my mindset was, I'm terrified and I need to get a job immediately so that I can afford to live. And I don't care if I have to move somewhere. And so I ended up getting a job in Boston at a children's hospital, which was a nice job. It was an upgrade from the first job I had out of school. However, I didn't want to be in Boston. I did not care about Boston. No offense to Boston. Love it now. Love visiting it. I think it's beautiful. I think it's historical. It's very clean. It has lots of amazing sports teams. Like, I get the hype around Boston, but I was loving New York and I was having my dream life in New York City minus the financial stress. And I just picked up everything and left for a job. And I didn't consider that New York City was where my heart truly was. I didn't consider that I might never move back there. And I didn't realize how hard it would be to leave this amazing group of friends I had and go to a city where I literally only knew one person. And, looking back, I should have just paused and asked myself these 7 questions before I made the decision to uproot my life and change everything. And I think I had this people pleaser mindset of like, I'm fine with anything. I'm happy with anything. I can do whatever and I'll be fine. I'm so easy breezy, easy going. But in reality, I just wasn't checking in with myself, and I wasn't thinking about who I was and what my values were and what was truly important to me. I just felt like, oh my gosh, I need a job. Let me take this quick one. When in reality, I really could have taken a little extra time to get clear on what I wanted and maybe double down on staying in the city and finding a career path there. Anyway, that's just one of several examples where I didn't ask myself these 7 questions about making decisions, where I ended up in a situation that was semi-permanent and just my life moved in that direction. And I never ended up moving back to New York City. I loved it there, and I only had 2 years there because I always told myself that I'd go back. And you know what? I didn't end up going back. And I wonder to this day, what would have happened if I stuck there a little bit longer? Of course, I am so happy with my life now because I've always also wanted to have a house in Connecticut with my husband and my baby. Like, life got back to where I wanted it to be, but I really didn't need to spend those years in Boston. Again, no offense to Boston. Love it, but New York was where I really should have spent my late 20s. And of course, everyone always says, well, why would you say that? Because you wouldn't end up with the life you have now. And obviously, I love the life I have now. I love my husband. I love our beautiful son. Of course, I wouldn't trade those things for a few years in New York City, but I am saying I imagined my mid to late 20s in New York and really ignored that part of me. I didn't know myself well enough to know that that was really important until it was too late. I also ended up moving out to Denver sort of against my heart as well. And those moves were, if I had more intentionality, they probably wouldn't have happened. And I could have still met Dan because we knew each other before our 20s. We knew each other in middle school. So maybe I could have had a life where I lived in New York so much longer than I did and ended up exactly here, exactly where I want to be in my 30s. Before I dive into my list of 7 questions you should ask yourself when making a big decision, I also want to make sure all of you are aware that I am offering for the very first time a free masterclass on how to start and grow your podcast. So, if you are a big podcast listener and want to start your own show, I am going to be teaching a live and free masterclass all about how to do this on February 5th from 6 to 7:15 p.m. Eastern Time on Zoom. Again, I said it's free. And I've been podcasting for over 4.5 years. The Full and Thriving podcast is ranked in the top 2.5% of all podcasts globally. We have over 200,000 downloads worldwide. And if you sign up for this masterclass, you will get to learn all of my favorite things about podcasting, and especially you will learn how to start. And I remember back before the pandemic, I really wanted to start my own show because I loved listening to podcasts. The podcasts I listened to would always change my life in a small way every single time I pressed play, whether it was I'd learn something new or have a new perspective on life. And I knew in my heart I wanted to have a podcast too. And I have to say, becoming a podcaster truly changed my life. And I'm so glad I ended up doing that. So if you relate to me in that situation, I highly recommend you join me on February 5th at 6 p.m. EST, Eastern Standard Time, for my free class. I will be teaching you why starting a podcast could be the best decision for you, your brand, or your business. I'll also be sharing how to craft a unique and standout show premise and also guide you on what format to choose, I will share 3 proven strategies on how to grow your podcast and maximize downloads. I'll also give you insider tips for landing your dream guests, even if you're new to the game. And then finally, this was the thing that I sat on for years and the reason why I didn't start my show right away. I will be sharing you some essential tech setup recommendations so that you can just hit record right away and get that dream show created. So I have the link to this free class in the show notes. You can also find it on Eventbrite, and you can reserve your spot right away. So head on over, sign up, and I will see you there. Okay, let's dive right into the real content of today's show. My big list, 7 questions you should ask yourself before making a huge life decision. The first question I recommend that you pause and think about is, where do I want to be 5, 10, 20 years from now? And does this fit into that vision? You could even think about where you want to be when you are 90 or 100 years old. The reason why I love this question is because it asks you to stretch out your life and think about what matters the most. Where do I want to be 5, 10, 20 years down the line? And when you do this exercise and reflect on that question, where do I want to be 5 years from now? Where do I want to be 50 years from now? I want you to think about the images that come up in your brain now. Do not second guess those images. If something comes up in your mind right now when you're thinking about your future, get clear on what that is. Where are you? Who are you with? What are you doing? What are you wearing? Just get every detail of the images that pop up because you will learn so much about yourself. I know one thing I always imagine when I am old, if I am privileged enough to live till my 90s, is that I really want to have a huge Thanksgiving table filled with lots of grandkids and kids and their partners, and just feel like I have this legacy of a family to look at with pride and love and joy. And that's something I really want for my life. So I know that having a family, being family oriented has always been a huge part of what I see. If I move to where do I want to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now, I actually see myself speaking on a stage. I have had this same vision for the past decade, which I also ignored. Interesting. I saw myself speaking on a stage with lots of people. I've loved public speaking my entire life. I love big events. I love having a message, which is why I love podcasting. However, I also love public speaking. And last year, I was reached out to by a podcast listener about having a keynote or giving a keynote talk to a Greek organization out in Wisconsin. And I was so freaking excited that this happened. And I did the keynote. I nailed it. I had an amazing experience. And I remembered that vision that I've always had, which is a vision of me speaking on stage to a large crowd of people. So this year, 2025, I'm finally taking that seriously and pitching myself to give talks to more organizations like this one. And I am actually finally aligning with that image that I've always had in my mind. Instead of saying to myself, I can't have this, I'm not ready for this, this isn't something that's possible, I'm just going to take it and run and really make an effort to make that vision come true. So that's what I want you to do. This first question, which is where do I want to be 5, 10, 20 years from now? It can really be 5 questions asking yourself like at different age points where you want to be. But really what I want you to do when you ask yourself this is get the imagery clear. When you ask yourself these questions, what are you seeing? And write that down and take those as very serious suggestions on where to take on what decision to make next in your life. Okay, my second question that I want you to ask yourself, and this is very much connected to the timeline question, which is, does this decision align with my core values? So, for instance, when you get those images on what you want your life to look like, it actually shows you a lot about what your core values are. So I gave you that example about having that giant Thanksgiving table full of family and loved ones. That shows to me that my core values are family, friends, and community. And that's a core value I need to make my decisions based upon. That's a huge reason why Dan and I both moved back to our hometown or right near our hometown, because we have so many friends and family in the area. And now our son gets to grow up with his grandparents. And that is just such a blessing in our lives. And both of us made these decisions when we were thinking about where to live based on that core value of family. So when you are decision making, think about who you are and what you truly value. And feel reassured that when you make a decision based on your core values, you will not be letting yourself down. Okay, question number 3 is, how does this decision make me feel in my body? So as we know, our brain and body are truly connected. And sometimes you can know if a decision is right for you based on the emotions that come up energetically and also how you feel in your body. So when I made the decision, after I lived in Boston, by the way, I moved to Denver. Also didn't really think of myself in that situation, but I would just start crying every day. Like before moving out there, I was crying every single day. I had this huge heaviness in my chest. I just felt a lot of anxiety. And obviously, I was just physically not okay because I was always crying. I think my body was trying to tell me, and my emotions were trying to tell me not to go. But I went against that. I would say that this question about how does this decision make me feel in my body, I really want you to just think about energetically if something makes you feel heavy or light. Does it make you feel lighter? Does it make you feel happier? Does it give you a sense of ease? Maybe that's the decision you need to make. If it makes you feel trapped and really scared in an unhealthy way, maybe that's not the right decision for you. What I suggest you do is actually kind of try on, in air quotes, your options. So imagine, again, this is a very visual list here. Imagine your life doing one thing and then imagine your life doing the other thing and see how you feel in both scenarios. Which scenario do you like better? Which one makes you feel happier, lighter? And then take that seriously. Again, you are using all these questions to gather information about yourself. So go with whatever feels best in your body on an energetic level. And I really want to remind you here that our bodies and our emotions really don't lie. So if you really want to do something, but something in your body doesn't feel right about it, or maybe this really heavy, sad emotion keeps coming up, maybe that isn't the right thing for you. So, a really good practice of honoring your intuition is listening to those clues that your body gives you and those clues that those emotions that you have are giving you, because those things will point you in the right direction. It just takes some time to acknowledge those and learn about those within yourself. I know many of us use our minds to convince us out of things or convince us into things, where in reality, maybe we should be listening more to our bodies when it comes to making big decisions. Okay, another question I want you to ask yourself, the fourth one, in this, and this is very similar to the question about energy I had, was which option will make me feel a little bit more free? So when you are making a big decision in your life, I want you to check in with, okay, where do I feel a little bit freer? Is it option A or B? Which one makes me feel happier, more excited, more alive? And I do want to point out that freedom is different than relief. Making a decision that helps you feel more free is a very positive experience. Making a decision so that you feel relief is often a decision based in fear. And we don't necessarily want to make our decisions based on fear itself. Of course, there is a healthy amount of fear that we need to acknowledge and we want to take into consideration. However, we don't want to be making decisions just based off of feeling this sense of relief, because again, relief isn't necessarily the same thing as freedom. So for instance, with my eating disorder recovery clients, using a behavior might make you feel a sense of relief, but it ultimately will not help you be free. Sitting with the discomfort and not using an eating disorder behavior will make you feel uncomfortable in the moment. However, in the long term, you will feel so much more free. So I want you to think about what will help me feel more free. And also, maybe as I'm talking about this, what decision will help me ultimately become more free? I think another example of this that could come up outside of eating disorder world is when you are in a relationship that is just okay. And for instance, say you are nearing that age where everyone starts to settle down and get married, and you are in this relationship, you don't really think it's the best one, but you really want to be married and have your partner and do the thing that everyone else is doing. So, in order to feel a sense of relief, you settle down with that partner who isn't great for you. However, not settling down with that person and choosing to take a risk will help you ultimately be more free. Yes, you might feel this sense of relief getting married at the right time. However, will you ultimately feel the most free doing that? And most likely the answer to that question is no. And maybe in fact, letting that relationship go is going to be painful at first, but ultimately help you feel more free in the long run. Okay, the fifth question I want you to ask yourself is, and this is a doozy, what might I lose that I value if I make this change? So many of us have hopes and dreams that we care about, that we really want, but for some reason we cannot get there. And this question really highlights the things standing in our way to getting what we want. Again, the question is, what might I lose that I value if I make this change? And one example of this that I want you to think about would be an example if you always have wanted to start a podcast, but you haven't. you answering this question will help you get clear on what's been standing in your way. So, for instance, if you ask the question, what might I lose that I value if I make this change? Maybe it's something like your time. Maybe you're afraid of spending all of the time on the podcast. Maybe you might lose your sense of privacy because it feels very vulnerable to start a podcast and have a voice. Maybe you'll lose the way people think of you. Maybe you're afraid that if you start a podcast, people will think of you in a certain way, and that feels really uncomfortable. And not saying that these things should hold you back, but it's a very good question to ask yourself to get clear on why you haven't done the thing or made the decision yet. And whatever comes up for you, I just want you to have compassion for yourself and where you're at. So I'm not saying that you just have to blaze through and ignore all of these things and just do the thing you want to do. But I want you to acknowledge and honor those things and see if those things are more valuable than making the change or not. And I think so many of us have these big dreams and decisions in front of us that we want to make, but we have a lot of valid reasons, many valid reasons for not doing those things. And so answering this question gives you a little bit of compassion for why it's been so hard. For instance, maybe you've always wanted to be a doctor. I don't know. Maybe you've wanted to go to medical school, but you know that if you go to medical school, you will be losing time with your kids or time, or maybe it's a lot of your savings or money, or maybe you'll have to take time away from your relationship. Whatever it may be, we have many valid reasons sometimes, and it's good to ask yourself this question to get clear on what is standing in your way and trying to find a way to feel better about making that change and just weighing the pros and cons. Maybe at the end of the day, you would love to be a doctor and go back to school, but you still ultimately decide that it's not worth giving up those things that you love. And so maybe that dream of becoming a doctor, well, it's something you've decided not to do. You don't have to shame yourself or beat yourself up so much for deciding not to do it. Okay, the sixth question is this decision coming from you, or is it something you feel like you, quote, should be doing? One of the most famous cognitive distortions in mental health is, quote, shoulding yourself, doing things because you feel like you should and not because you truly want to for yourself. So again, this question really gets down to doing something for you versus doing something because this is what society tells you you should be doing at this point. So for instance, I made that example about someone choosing to settle down with the wrong person because they're at that age everyone is getting married, right? It's like, are you making that decision for you, or are you doing that for everyone else and for society and like their expectations on you? So for instance, another way you could ask yourself this is, am I doing this for me, or am I doing this to meet someone else's expectations? And again, I always want you to come back to doing what is best for you and what you want for your life. And I promise you, you won't regret that. It might be the harder decision to make. It's not going to be easy. But again, valuing yourself and knowing that your feelings matter and what you choose to do with your life is ultimately the most important is way better than living your whole life doing life the way you feel like people have told you to do it. Okay, and my seventh and final question, and I can't believe I ran through all seven already. The seventh and final question is, am I making this decision from a place of fear or love? This question will get to the heart of any decision you have to make. Am I making this decision from a place of fear or love? When I moved out to Boston from New York, I made that decision from a place of fear, money fear, financial fear, stability fear, when in reality, if I had made that decision from a place of love, I would have had a little bit more patience, compassion for myself, and I would have gotten more clarity on what I wanted to actually do. And sometimes when we let fear make our decisions, our judgment isn't as true to who we are. So again, is this decision coming from a place of fear or is it coming from a place of love? And many of these questions I asked actually help you get to that. So like the question about feeling free versus feeling a sense of relief. Feeling a sense of relief is usually a decision based in fear, right? So if you are like, oh my gosh, I've made this decision because I just want to get it over with and I need to do it now, and it's going to make me feel better today, I can stop doing this thing. Yeah, that's a decision based out of fear, where love is maybe I'm going to wait it out, trust my vision, trust what I want is real and good for me, and make the other decision, right? So love versus fear will never steer you wrong. Yes, I did intentionally try to rhyme those things. But at the end of the day, those are those 7 big questions I want you to ask yourself before making a big decision. Now, let me reiterate for those of you who maybe want to write these down. First question is, 1, where do I want to be down the road, as in 5, 10, 20 years from now? 2 is, does this decision align with my core values? Question number 3 is, how does this decision make me feel in my body? 4 is, which option will make me feel a little bit more free? 5 is, what might I lose that I value if I make this change? That's a really good journaling question, by the way. Number 6 is this decision coming from me, or is it coming from something you feel like you should do, right? So I think I'm going to rephrase that. Number 6 is this decision coming from you, or is it coming from something you feel like you, quote, should do? And finally, number 7 is, am I making this decision from a place of love or fear? Those are your 7 questions. I want you to just be radically honest with yourself when answering these. Definitely write out the answers to your questions if you can. And just remember that if you can answer these 7 questions, you are going to have so much more clarity on the right decision for you. And try not to judge your decisions. Try not to force any decisions on yourself. Just allow yourself to hold that truth, whether it's a scary truth or an exciting truth. I know some decisions are terrifying, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't make them, right? I want you to be with yourself with whatever decision you have. Most decisions that are big are scary ones. Even if you know you're making the right decision, it can still feel a little bit scary. So just sit with the emotions that come up and know that you are doing something big for you and you are being intentional with your life. And that is really what I hope for all of you, is that you can answer these 7 questions and just live with a little bit more intention, and you can feel good with the decision you made. You don't have to go back and look back on your life and think, that was not the right choice for me. We can hopefully prevent that. And if you do ever make a decision that isn't right for you. Like I said, I've made a lot of haphazard decisions, a lot of rushed decisions that I don't think were aligned with my core values and my true self. Ultimately, they've all ended me up in a place where I am truly happy and in a wonderful relationship and with a great family. And I'm on the path that I always wanted. There are some places where I'm still not quite there. But what I'm saying is, even if you answer all of these questions and you still feel like you've made the wrong decision in your life, or maybe this episode has made you feel like you've made some wrong decisions, it is okay. We end up where we're supposed to be. And every single life lesson we go through helps us learn something new about ourselves. So all of my trials and tribulations, all of my ups and downs, my jagged path that I've been on in life, all of those moments have helped me realize how important these 7 questions are. And of course, these questions are in no particular order. Maybe just one of these questions can change your life. But I really do want you to make your next big decision with intention behind it, and knowing that it comes from you and that it is true to you as a human. All right. That's it for this week's episode of Full and Thriving. Again, I am having a podcasting masterclass on February 5th. It is completely free. I would love to see the Full and Thriving podcast fans join me for that call, and I will teach you so much about podcasting. You're going to leave feeling inspired, motivated, and ready to go. So check out the show notes. Sign yourself up while you still can, and I will see you on February 5th. Thank you, everyone, so much, and I will see you next time on Full and Thriving. So there you have it, another episode of Full and Thriving in the books. I want to personally thank you for joining me in listening to today's show. And if you found value in this conversation, I would be so grateful if you could please take a moment to subscribe to the show and leave a review. Your support not only helps us reach more people who are striving to live their most full and thriving life, but it also allows us to bring on even more incredible guests with valuable insights that can change your life. Every follow, every review makes a huge difference, and together we can continue to grow this beautiful community. Thanks again for being a part of the journey, and we'll see you next time on Full and Thriving.